Most photographers think powerful stories alone win awards, but surprisingly, one subtle sharpness flaw quietly ruins their perfect shot. After judging prestigious contests like Nature Photographer of the Year and guiding hundreds of my students win awards, I've discovered exactly how fixable this costly mistake actually is. So in this video, I'm going to show you precisely what judges look for and 4 easy sharpness fixes that will make your photos instantly stand apart. So what's this sharpness issue? It goes like this. You're driving late at night, heading somewhere new, unsure about the roads. You're looking around, feeling a bit lost, when suddenly, sirens. You pull over, heart racing. The sheriff approaches your window and asks, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" You panic. Was I speeding? Did I miss a stop sign? But then the sheriff smiles and says, "I saw you slowing down and looking around. You seemed lost. I just wanted to check if you're okay." So what does this have to do with sharpness? For years, I chased sharpness by buying the sharpest lenses, the best autofocus cameras, and using fast shutter speeds. But I never stopped to think about what judges actually look for and why. Recently, I judged an international photo contest. One judge voted for an incredible bird photo to win. Stunning composition, beautiful lighting, powerful emotion. She nearly convinced us all. But then, at the last moment, she zoomed in, paused, and quietly said, "Forget it. It's not sharp enough." Just like that, the photo lost. Imagine how that photographer would feel never knowing how close they came to winning, only to lose because of one simple mistake. But what exactly did the judge mean by not sharp? The photo looked sharp at first glance, but it still failed the sharpness test. I've seen countless great photos miss out because of subtle sharpness issues. Photographers often assume they need better storytelling or stronger composition, not realizing they're actually losing due to overlooked sharpness mistakes. To save you from this frustration, I've identified 4 most common sharpness mistakes photographers make. Judges aren't randomly picky. They have clear reasons for their choices. Sure, they want the best, most compelling photo, but there's one critical requirement many photographers overlook. Your photo must have enough sharpness and details to be printed large, sometimes up to 60 inches, for magazines, yearbooks, or gallery exhibits. If your image has been cropped too heavily from the raw file, judges immediately see it as unusable. Do they always check the raw file itself? No. They use visual clues. So what are these? For example, if shadow area like under a bird's wing appear as blurry dark patches without any details, judges suspect heavy cropping. I used to think my high-resolution camera would let me crop freely, but looking back, most of my winning images were captured nearly full frame without much cropping at all. Even a 45+ megapixel camera can't fully rescue lost details from excessive cropping, even if they still look sharp. By the way, don't forget to download my free 1-page PDF summary in the link below. You might ask, but Tin Man, birds and wildlife are skittish. How can I get close without cropping? And this goes back to the impact model I explained in another video linked below. Impact is all about careful planning and location choice, which many misunderstood. I used to photograph wildlife whenever sightings were reported, but many popular locations aren't ideal for photography. Some allow hunting, making birds and animals skittish, and some locations have rules requiring you to shoot from far away, like 100 yards. If you are lucky and patient, you might get a decent shot. But if you have a full-time job and have limited time in the field, it may not be a wise way to spend your precious time there. Distance also creates another sharpness killer: heat shimmer. The further away your subject, the more likely heat shimmer will blur your details. Make sure you stay further away from roads and from any vehicles. Some software like Topaz Sharpen seems to help fixing heat shimmer issues as well. The better solution: carefully research and choose location where you can safely get closer to animals. I'd rather invest more money and travel to places where animals are calm and approachable than waste countless hours in unfavorable location. Recently, I've even been using shorter lenses like my 70-200 and sometimes even a 50mm because I choose easier locations. One final tip: to reassure judges your photo isn't heavily cropped, gently open up shadow areas in editing. Just use brush to select the area, slide the shadow slider slightly to the right, revealing subtle details. Remember, sharpness isn't luck, it's preparation. So guess what's the second thing judges immediately check? Even though we live in modern civilization, our brains still function like our caveman ancestors. Out in the wilderness, deep in the bush or forest, our brains instinctively scan for one crucial thing: the eyes. Sharp, clear eyes means danger, triggering our fight or flight response instantly. This instinct search for sharp eyes doesn't just apply to survival, it also shapes how we perceive images. Legendary National Geographic photographer Michael Nichols, who won the overall prize for Wildlife Photographer of the Year, once told me something I'll never forget. Tin Man, as long as the subject's eyes are sharp, the entire image feels sharp. Why? Because human perception immediately locks onto eyes. Even slight softness in the eyes instantly makes the whole image feel blurry or unprofessional, no matter how sharp the rest of your subject is or the photo is. When you zoom in and the eyes are not sharp, it's likely because of missed focus, camera shake, or not enough shutter speed. I would suggest not to choose those photos to submit because you don't want to be known as someone who hasn't mastered the technical side of photography. A slight boost in contrast or careful use of sharpening software such as Topaz Sharpen can help. Just make sure you always double-check contest rules, as some restricts sharpening tools. Portrait photographers spend hours meticulously editing eyes to bring out details. For wildlife and birds, though, subtlety is key. You want natural-looking eyes. Another great tip from the great Nichols: always try to shoot wide open. Why? Because wide open apertures blur the background beautifully, isolating your subject's sharp eyes. If you stop down, use higher f numbers, or your lens maximum aperture is 7.1 or even f8, the background becomes sharper and busier, distracting viewers and making the photos feel less sharp overall. Remember the peripheral pull I talked about in one of the videos, also linked below, as one of the biggest mistakes? Sharp eyes aren't just a nice to have detail, they are essential. Ensuring your subject's eyes are perfectly sharp is one of the most powerful ways to elevate your wildlife photography. So what about the third sharpness mistake? It goes like this. You're on vacation. You've chosen a beautiful hotel. They proudly advertise free unlimited breakfast buffet. The website's photos look stunning. Golden croissants, towers of fresh food, sizzling bacon in cast iron pans. It looks perfect. Fast forward to the next morning. You show up at 7:30 a.m. Then you notice a small sign. Breakfast hours, 6 to 7 a.m. only. When you ask the front desk, they shrug and say, well, we did offer breakfast, you just didn't get here in time. This same trap catches many wildlife photographers when they buy flashy f6.3, f7.1 or f8 zoom lenses. The ads promise amazing things: huge zoom range, lightweight, affordable, perfect for wildlife, and indeed these are correct. But then you are in the field at sunrise and something magical happens. An eagle flying through golden morning light. You need a fast shutter speed to freeze the action, but your lens, stuck at f7.1, meaning that it doesn't let much light in, forces your camera to crank the ISO up, creating grainy, soft, unusable images. Just like the hotel breakfast was technically included but practically useless, these lenses technically delivers their promised specs but fail you when conditions matter most. So before investing in new gear, don't just ask, does this sound impressive? Ask instead, will it hold up when the light is low, when the action is fast, when everything has to work perfectly? If you don't own a super telephoto lens, consider renting one for your next big trip. Because in wildlife photography, you rarely get second chances. Do you remember those old HDR photos? HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. They used to be popular, but honestly, every time I look at them, I kind of want to puke. Why? Because they look flat, unnatural, and artificial. Unfortunately, this same unnatural look happens frequently in wildlife photography contests. Some editing gurus suggest photographers to immediately lower highlights and raise shadows whenever they import their photos, aiming for no blown out areas and maximum shadow details. But here's the truth. When you aggressively add these shadows and highlights, your photo ends up looking exactly like those outdated HDR images. Why does this matter for contests? Because judges immediately notice When shadows and highlights are unnaturally evened out, the lack of contrast makes the image look flat and soft, causing judges to perceive it as less sharp. Judges aren't fooled by attempts to rescue harshly lit images. Earlier, I advised gently opening shadows locally to reveal subtle details, such as under a bird's wing, but this doesn't mean lifting shadows across your entire image. Even local adjustment must be subtle and careful. If the lighting conditions are harsh, no amount of editing can truly save your image. The real solution: photograph during early morning or late evening, or the full day when it's overcast. Low-light photography can introduce noise at higher ISO, reducing perceived sharpness. But there's a way to master exposure and metering in the field to overcome this. I'll show you exactly how in my next video. Click here.